Having a strengths-based approach works best when all parts of the organisation buy into it and use the approach. And I'm really happy to introduce our next speaker, who's Carolyn Sheehan, and she's the Director of Strategy, Planning and Performance at the Royal Women's Hospital, as well as having a couple of board positions, one with the Melbourne City Mission and the other with the Victorian Indigenous Nurseries Cooperative. And today, Caroline's going to talk about alignment. Her topic is aligning organisational strategy and fundraising, communications and marketing approaches, and she's going to give us an industry insider's perspective. So thank you, Caroline.
Thanks very much, and lovely to be here with you all today. So you can probably tell by that horribly long title, I'm not a comms person. I'm a strategy person who's always worked in the sector. So what I wanted to talk a bit about is for-purpose organisations, which I've always worked for, when they sort of are thinking about and designing their strategies, their company plans, their company values, their frameworks, they put a huge amount of thought and effort into that. And it's just a snapshot of sort of some of the things you would typically find in a not-for-profit. You'll find, as I say, strategic plans, diversity strategies, practitioner frameworks. They're all documents which are generally completely embedded in strengths-based. They're informed by client design, client voice co-design. They use concepts like asset-based community development, which are concepts that have been around for many decades. They use principles like nothing about us without us to inform the development of all these documents and strategies. You've also got things like, you can sort of, one of them up there is ACFID, you've got industry standards, you've got the social work practice sort of professional standards. All these standards just imbue these concepts. Organisations are rightly really proud of these documents and what they say. They're positive, they're aspirational, they're affirming, they're strengths-based. They're reinforced as part of board, staff and volunteer induction. They are emphasised in client charters. What these documents say to staff and volunteers who want to come and work at these organisations is really important, and often they want to attract people into these organisations or attract partners who want to work with them. They inform how programs and services are designed. They inform partnerships with other not-for-profits. They're part of the organisation's brand, reputation, DNA. They're really critical. So what happens when you've got a complete disconnect between these documents and maybe your marketing, your fundraising and your communications? Frankly, it can be really devastating to your organisation's reputation. If that's how it's portrayed in the public, that's a complete disconnect from all those previous documents I've just shown you. It breaks trust with clients, it breaks trust with staff and volunteers. It can seriously put off informed donors and partners who are drawn to the work of the organisation because of those documents I showed on the previous slide. Words matter, images matter, and we've heard that already today. These pics on the screen are thankfully becoming less common, but they're still used by many across the sector. And I'd also like to say there were far worse ones I could have put up there, but I could not bring myself to do it. So this images and the stories that would have accompanied these images as well are usually highly manipulative, emotive, guilt-inducing. They contradict everything that those strategy and guiding documents stand for. They perpetuate myths about people experiencing vulnerability. They're disrespectful to people experiencing vulnerability. And a good litmus test is, how would you feel if that was you portrayed up there or one of your loved ones portrayed up there? Photos are a really powerful part of storytelling, and while we've got some pretty awful ones up there, a few quick tips on what to avoid. Consider the power differential in your photos. Don't have your staff or volunteers hovering over clients and participants. Don't position your organisation's staff and volunteers as being the ones that are going to come in as the donors, the heroes, the saviours. We've got a nice little example there in the bottom corner of what we like to call white saviour syndrome. And as someone once said to me, just Google humanitarians of Tinder if you'd like to see the worst examples of that. Don't define people by, as we've heard today, don't define people by their circumstances and don't use language that perpetuates these stereotypes. Instead, do things like this. Focus on impact. Celebrate resilience and agency of individuals experiencing vulnerability. Make sure your words and your images align with organisation guiding documents. Tell great and inspiring stories. And Zane, who's going to come up next, is going to share some of that and how to do it. How would you feel now if you or your loved ones were represented up there? I suspect you'd actually be okay with it. So how do you move to this style of storytelling? And I'll particularly emphasise fundraising. How do you move to fundraising that doesn't tell the sort of guilt-inducing story, but uses these really positive images? Let me give you some insights from when I worked at Australian Red Cross in the humanitarian division. So in 2018, I was acting as Director of Fundraising for a period of time. And at that time, we decided to make the shift to completely strengths-based fundraising. Some background, Australian Red Cross, like many not-for-profits, doesn't get any core or block funding from government. All its income comes from either competitively winning tenders or raising funds from the public, or through things like its op-shop networks, partnerships with corporates. In 2018, when I was acting as the Director of Fundraising, our Red Cross's annual budget was around $250 million, of which about $83 million needed to be raised from the general public to deliver the services. That's a huge fundraising target, and the fundraisers who worked in the team were phenomenal, committed and passionate. They had a massive target to meet though. As part of the executive of Red Cross, we also were having some really good discussions. We had a new CEO, a fabulous woman by the name of Judy Slatcher, who came on board, and as being part of the executive, we really started to talk about what were our images and our messages and storytelling saying. And we made a collective decision that all our fundraising from then on would be strengths-based. What we were doing at the time wasn't as bad as that previous set of images I showed you, but it wasn't great. It also wasn't very diverse. There was lots of emphasising fundraising programs for older Anglo-Australians, because that was pretty safe. And it didn't really reflect the actual amazing work that Red Cross was doing with asylum seekers, youth at risk, First Nations communities. So Judy started to sort of really encourage us to have some conversations, and we sort of took this all the way top to our board as well, about saying if we're making this shift, and if we raise less money this time, so be it. I'd rather that than compromise our clients. So it was a really ethical lens to what we were doing too. We moved away from highly emotive, guilt-inducing direct mail campaigns. Practically, this meant we needed to design an entirely new fundraising playbook. We needed to ensure everyone involved in executing that playbook understood what we were doing and understood how to do it. We needed to spend time educating and bringing along the in-house fundraising staff, the external agencies and the campaign designers, the photographers, the videographers. We needed to commission new stories, new images. We had so many conversations about what image was strength-based and what was not. Can we show someone crying? Can we show someone hugging? Can we show someone doing it tough? We pored over text, we changed words, we changed tone. We did loads of A/B testing. We adjusted based on data, not gut. We rebuilt the relationship between the fundraising team and the programs and services teams, because we relied on the programs and services teams for the stories. And that relationship had really broken down. The programs and services team were pretty close to refusing to pass on stories because they didn't like how they were being treated and how the stories were being told. We got the teams together to learn from each other, because the program and services team also needed to understand that to raise $86 million or so per annum to fund programs and services is a really tough gig. And so they needed to understand each other's context. They needed to learn from each other, and that learning needed to be continuing. It wasn't one-off, it was ongoing. We started to work in really different ways with clients who we profiled in stories, and informed consent became a much stronger part of what we were doing. In the past, we would kind of commission big photo shoots around particular work we were doing. Clients would sign waivers, yes, you can use my photo, and then we would say thanks, and we probably never talk to them again. But what we would end up doing is they wouldn't realise we might then use a hero photo. I learned about hero photos. We might use a hero photo as the main photo for a tax campaign. The first time the client might realise they are the hero shot for our tax campaign was when they maybe sat at the bus stop and looked around and went, oh, that's me. So we really and again, how would you feel if that was you? You signed a permission form 12 months ago for your photo because you were caught up in a bushfire and maybe your photo was taken, to then see that you're the major face of a campaign. So we made really conscious shifts in what we were doing. We tested new ways of storytelling and new ways of fundraising. We kept learning, and it's an ongoing journey. We kept learning together about how to do that. We made our targets. But more importantly, we maintained the dignity, respect, and agency of the people we were there to support. Thank you.